Which is better, the Samsung Galaxy A23 5G or the Samsung Galaxy A23 4G LTE? In this video, we're going to find out. So yes, there are two completely different devices under the A23 banner. There is the original A23, also known as the A23 4G LTE, and then more recently, in September of 2022, we got the Galaxy A23 5G. Now, one difference between these two phones is that this one works with 5G networks and this one does not. But there's also other differences as well. I'm looking forward to going through all of those throughout this video. Another thing worth considering too is that out of these two devices, only the A23 5G is officially being offered in the US. However, I am aware that I have an audience from all around the world, so both of these phones might be available in certain regions simultaneously. It kind of depends. Now, the first thing I want to mention is that these two phones do have pretty much the same form factor. They both have 6.6-inch displays. They both feature Corning Gorilla Glass 5, and then the overall layout of everything is pretty much identical. I suppose the biggest difference of these two phones when you're looking at them is that we have a glossy finish with the A23 4G LTE, whereas the A23 5G has a matte plastic finish. Now, as far as the displays go, we do have some similarities and also a few differences. So they both feature PLS LCD displays. However, one difference is that with the A23 5G, we have a 120Hz refresh rate with this display, giving us a really smooth and premium experience, whereas with the Galaxy A23 4G, we have a 90Hz refresh rate with this display. So that's still a bit better and more premium compared to a 60Hz refresh rate, but without a doubt, out of these two phones, the A23 5G does have the better display of the two. Now, in addition to that, both phones do have 1080p displays, so everything is very crisp and clear. They also both feature a PPI 400. They also both have 20:9 aspect ratios, so a more narrow but taller form factor, which makes these phones ideal for going on social media. And with the A23 5G, we have an 82.5% screen-to-body ratio compared to an 83% screen-to-body ratio with the A23 4G. Now, as I mentioned earlier, and as you can probably tell by looking at these devices, they do both feature water drop notches, and they both feature 8-megapixel front-facing cameras. And in addition to that, both phones are offered with 64 gigabytes of internal storage, along with microSD card expansion, so you could potentially offload photos and videos if you want to free up some space. Now, with the A23 4G, this phone is also offered with 128 gigabytes, so you can get a higher storage configuration if you want to. It really just depends on what's offered in each region. Now, neither of these two phones feature wireless charging, which is a bit unfortunate, but they both have fingerprint sensors on the power buttons. So let's first give this a try with the A23 5G. There we go, nice and quick and accurate. And now we'll give it a try with the A23 4G. Also very quick and accurate. And then both of these phones do support Face Unlock. So I do appreciate that both devices offer multiple methods for accessing them. Now, the camera configurations with these two devices is exactly the same, and we have the same megapixel counts as well. So with both phones, we have 50 megapixel main cameras, 5 megapixel ultra wide angle cameras that can capture images at 123 degrees, 2 megapixel macro cameras, and 2 megapixel depth sensing cameras. And then both phones do support portrait mode as well. Now, one difference is that with the A23 5G, video recording does max out at 1080p with both the front and rear cameras, whereas with the A23 4G, we do have 4K video recording support for the rear camera. So that is a bit interesting how there's that difference, but I believe the processor that we're getting with the A23 4G supports 4K video recording, whereas the one with the A23 5G does not. Now, here's how things look on the camera apps on both devices. This is with the main cameras on both phones right now. Then from here, we can switch over to the ultra wide angle cameras to fit a lot more content into the frame here. Then from there, we can go over to the More tab to access the macro cameras. So with the macro cameras, we can get very close up and have things be in really good detail, which is awesome. We can then head out of here and go over to, wait for it, the portrait mode. So with portrait mode, we get those nice blurred out backgrounds. We can also flip around and do the same thing with the front-facing cameras to take portrait selfies. You can also do group selfies if you want to. And with both phones, of course, we do get support for standard selfies as well. So definitely a lot of different abilities when it comes to the cameras on both of these phones, which is a great thing to see. And definitely, I think this is a good entry point if you're not so sure if you want to pay a lot of money for a more expensive Android phone, but at the same time, you want a lot of different camera features to see if you're actually using them and if it's worthwhile to pay more for a more premium device in the future. Now, these devices do feature different processors. However, they both feature 4 gigabytes of RAM. Now, with the Galaxy A23 5G, we're getting the Qualcomm Snapdragon 695, and then with the Galaxy A23, we're getting the Qualcomm Snapdragon 680. Now, besides these processors offering different levels of power, another major difference is that with the A23 5G, as the name does imply, we do have 5G support here. Now, in 2022, I do think you can definitely get by without a 5G phone, but at the same time, if you're going to go through all the work of getting a brand new smartphone, I feel like you may as well get one that does support your carrier's latest and greatest network. And with that in mind, the A23 5G is the only phone of the two that can actually do that. Now, I did run a benchmark test using Geekbench 5 with both phones, and I'll show you the scores from that test right now. But essentially, you can see the numbers right here. We do get a lot better performance with the A23 5G in comparison. So not only are we getting 5G connectivity, but the phone actually runs faster when doing pretty much any task. So that is one thing that I have noticed from my time with both of these phones, that with the A23 5G, this phone is significantly faster. And not only are we getting that smoother 120 Hz refresh rate with the display, but at the same time, the phone in general can just do a lot more, a lot better. So there might not be a whole lot of differences when it comes to the general designs and form factors and different features that we're getting, but as far as the processors go, the A23 5G is by far the better choice of the two. Now, both of these devices do feature very large 5,000 mAh internal batteries. They also both feature Android 12, running Samsung's One UI 4.1, and both phones do support NFC. So if you do like to make mobile contactless payments, you can do that here with either of these two phones, which is really awesome. That's definitely a feature that I like to use with any device that does support it. But now that we've talked quite a bit about the specifications and features of these two phones, let's now take a closer look at the actual hardware. Now, I already talked quite a bit about the materials being used here and the general form factors of the devices. They're pretty much the same, except we have a glossy finish with the A23 4G, and then the overall button layouts and everything are identical as well. So on the left side of both phones, we have the slot for the microSD card and SIM card. On the right side of both phones, we have volume up, volume down, and also the fingerprint sensor, which doubles as the power button. Then up top here, both phones offer noise-canceling microphones, and then both phones do feature 3.5mm headphone jacks, microphones, USB-C ports for charging and data transfer, and speakers. So if you do want to use traditional wired headphones, thankfully, you can use those with either of these two devices. So in conclusion, I don't think there's really going to be that many people that are necessarily cross-shopping these two devices, considering that in most regions, they're not both available. However, if you do find yourself in that situation, or if you're just curious in general, the A23 5G is a lot better in pretty much every way compared to the A23 4G LTE. So with that in mind, it's really the price difference that would be the main deciding factor when choosing one or the other. And the prices definitely differ by region as well. Now, I have linked to both of these phones in the video description, so definitely take a look if you want to see the most up-to-date pricing and availability. But in general, I do think they're both good options if you're looking for an affordable Android phone that can still get the job done for the majority of tasks that people would expect from a smartphone. But hopefully this video helped and you found it to be interesting and informative. But this is Kevin here. This is the Samsung Galaxy A23 5G versus the Samsung Galaxy A23 4G LTE. And I will see you in the next video.